Okay, so in our first video, we created our ERC4626 token vault contract, and we also created our USD.sol contract, which is for our ERC20 asset that we're going to deposit into the vault and that we need to pass into our constructor. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some tests. Now, I've renamed this file token vault.t.sol, and it's just a counter. I'm just going to rename, cut out all this stuff here. And I'm just going to change this. This is going to be called token vault. Token vault. Token vault test. It's test. Okay, and we'll just do. So we're importing our token vault. We're also testing console, which are a part of the tests. Import. Just import our USDC from dash source USDC. That's all. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to just do that. Actually, we'll just do this. And every one of these needs a setup function. Public. Okay. And what first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just set up some variables. So our variables are going to be our token vault, public, and we'll just call it vault. Okay. And then what we're going to do is our USDC. Public, and we'll just call it. We could call it asset. I'm just going to call it USDC, just so we're clear on what it is, on what it is we're doing. So I'm just going to call it that, and then we just go user setup. Or just say users. And we're just going to do address, public, and again, like previous videos, just going to do. Just going to call the first one Bob and the second one Alice. Bob. Address, public, Alice. Make ADDR Alice, and they're both going to need a starting balance of ETH. So we're going to do that. We'll do that in our setup. Starting balance. I'm just going to give them 10,000 ETH. Okay. Good stuff. So now what we're going to do is in our setup function. We're going to need to do a few things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our token asset, aka USDC. USDC. We're also going to need to mint some USDC to our users. Then we're going to need to create our token vault. Again, the reason we're doing the USDC first is that we need to deploy our USDC token or whatever token asset we're using. It needs to be deployed first, so then we can pass it into the constructor of our vault. And then we're going to give our users some ETH to transact with. Okay, so create the first thing we do, create the USDC token. So it's just going to be, we've already declared it up here, so just need to assign USDC equals new USDC, and we don't have to pass anything in. Our USDC already has the constructor arguments there, so we just need to declare like I've done there in the test or in the setup. Now what we're going to do is just go USDC dot mint. We're going to give Bob some, give him 50 E18, USDC mint Alice 50 E18 as well. And the reason I'm creating two users is Bob is going to be the user that's going to deposit into the contract. He's just going to be a user essentially, okay? But Alice, we're going to use Alice as kind of part of our dummy strategy. So while Bob will be depositing into the contract using this deposit function here, what I'm going to get Alice to do is to send tokens directly to the contract without doing that, because I don't want Alice to get shares. I want to just kind of bulk up the tokens in the vault. So if you imagine if Bob puts in 100 tokens or 100 USDC and he gets back 100 shares, I want to increase the amount of tokens in the contract without increasing the amount of shares. So that if Bob was to take them out, say I got Alice to put 100 tokens in without going through the deposit function, there'll now be 200 in the contract, but only 100 shares, and that Bob will have. So that's just to see how kind of a dummy function or a dummy strategy would work, for example. So the next thing to do is just, and then we're going to create our vault. So vault, we've declared it up above. It's going to be new token vault. We will pass in our arguments. Again, USDC is going to be the asset that we want, and then we'll call it vault USDC. That's the name of it, and then we will just the ticker is going to be VUSDC. So that's the way we're going to do that. And then we just need to VM deal. Give Bob his starting balance, and we'll do the same for Alice. Starting. There we go. Okay. Oh, VM deal. Sorry. Stay there. VM deal, and it is Alice. Okay, and what I'm going to do is we're going to need a helper down below. Helpers. And what's our helper going to be called? We call it deposit USDC as Bob. Okay. And for this, we're just going to do VM, and we do start prank Bob, and then we're going to use USDC approve. And we're going to address vault, and we'll just say 999000 like that. Just want to pick a big number. It doesn't really matter. And then we're going to do vault deposit. Here we go. Underscore deposit, and we're going to deposit in. We'll deposit 100,000 tokens. Okay. In VM, we'll do stop prank. Okay. And that should be it. And the reason I'm doing this is I just want to put it down here because we're going to use it in every test. Essentially, in every test that we do, we're going to have Bob approve the vault to spend this many tokens and then deposit in 100,000. And I just rather write it up front and just have it done, and then we can just, all we'll have to do then is in our test pop this in first, and then we'll do the rest of what we're going to do. Okay. So our first test is going to be function. We do test, and we will call it we'll just call it deposit assets. Yeah, deposit assets. It's going to be public. There we go. So in here, so as I said, we're going to do a deposit USDC as Bob. So that's the first thing. So first thing that's going to happen in this test is that 100 Bob is going to approve a load of tokens, and then he's going to deposit 100,000 into the contract. Okay. So what we'll do is you do uint 256, and we call it Bob balance. We'll call it share balance. Bob share balance. Yeah. And then we'll do vault dot total shares of user, or total shares of user Bob, and then we're going to do assert equal, and we're going to say Bob share balance is equal to 100,000. And then if we run this test, a second now, we go forge test, that should pass. Yep, it's passing. So what's happening there is Bob is depositing 100,000 of USDC. Okay, so he's passing 100,000 USDC into the vault, and he's getting back 100,000 shares. Okay, so these are the tokenized representation of his shares in the vault. And what we're saying is, are the amount of shares back equal to 100,000? And that's what's happening there. Okay. So for our next test, then we're going to do test withdraw. Withdraw assets. And we'd say withdraw assets using shares, because we're going to be passing in the shares to withdraw the tokens. Okay. And once again, deposit assets as deposit USDC as Bob, I should say. There we go. And now again, we're going to do I prefer to do it like this: start prank and stop prank, to do the two of them. Even though it's only one line, don't need to do start and stop, but I'll stop prank. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to do vault, and with dot underscore withdraw, and we want him to withdraw, and we'll say, let me see. So we're going to we'll withdraw. How many withdraw? With 100,000 in it, so we're going to withdraw. Let's see, 99111. That will be okay. So that 99111 is going to be a mini we're going to withdraw. So if there's 100,000, 99111, that should leave 889, I think. So we'll do uint 256, and we're going to do Bob share balance once again, and it equals vault.total shares of user Bob. We're going to do assert equal, and we need to do Bob share balance, and we 889. So just check that's right. So we say 889. So 111. Yeah, I think that's 100,000. So that should pass. So what we're really doing here is we're doing the same as above. Depositing his USDC is Bob, putting 100,000 into the contract, but then Bob has also withdrawn this many assets from the contract. And as of at the moment, the amount of shares and the amount of assets are equal, because it's the same amount in, the same amount out. So if he takes out that many, and we check his shares, there should be 889 left in the contract. So I'm just gonna copy this, and we'll do clear forge test match test, and we do that, and match test withdraw assets using shares. What have I done there? Let me see. Oh, I didn't save the file. Try it again. Clear. There we go. So they're both passing. Okay. So far so good. We're just what we're doing is with our deposit and withdraw. Okay. Deposit assets. Put that there, and then withdraw assets. So that's kind of simple and straightforward. What I'm going to do now is I want to do a test without a strategy and with a strategy. Okay, so this one is going to be called no strat. It's no strategy. Then we'll have one underneath it with strategy. Okay. Now, the one with strategy is not going to be a full DeFi strategy where the vault is going to go out. We are going to try and implement that in the next video. What I want to do now is I just want to show you how the underlying accounting with the tokens works with regards to if you had a strategy in place and more USDC or more of the assets that you deposit into the vault, if the contract was actually going out into DeFi and getting increasing that, how the tokens and the shares would react under the hood. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a function, and we will call it test, and it's going to be understood. It's going to be preview redeem, and it is no strategy, we call it. Okay, so I'll explain to you what I'm doing now in a second. So there is actually a function within the ERC4626 preview redeem, and what this does is you can pass in your shares, and what you're going to get back is you're going to get the amount of assets that you're going to get back from the vault. Okay, now if we look here in our test, you're looking at it going where am I there now? So yeah, so withdraw assets. You're saying, oh well, if we withdraw assets, I mean it's 1 for 1, okay? And in our first couple of tests, yeah, it's 1 for 1. You put in 100 assets, you get 100 shares back. You redeem 100 shares, you get 100 assets back. But that's not the purpose of the vault. Is actually to increase the amount of assets in the pool, so as that you get more back out. And that's where the strategy will come in, okay? So when there's no strategy, what we're going to do is once again we just do our deposit USDC is Bob. There we go. So I'll get 100 into the vault, okay? Then what we're going to do is uint 256, and we're going to call it shares to assets, shares to assets, yeah, redemption, call it, okay? And that's going to be vault. And we're going to do preview redeem. That's what we call the test preview redeem. And we're going to do preview redeem. So if we were to say, say we said if we were to do 10,000. How many would you get back, and what the vault will do the calculation, say how many will get back. Okay, so we do this. So with no strategy, cert equals shares to assets redemption. that should pass, okay? Because what we're saying is there's no strategy in place. When you put 10,000 in, you should get 10,000 back. I'll just quickly do a forge test, just to make sure that passes. Yep, and that's passing okay. But then what we'll do, so that's absolutely fine. It's just saying that there's no strategy in place like for like. It's one for one, okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to function, and we're going to call test, and we're going to say preview, redeem with strategy. Public. In fact, what I'll call this is, I'll actually change the name. I'm going to call it with dummy strategy, because it's not we're not actually doing anything except spitting a load of tokens into the contract and making it simulate as if there was more earned. Okay, and what we're going to do is once again, as with every test, deposit USDC is Bob to get 100,000 into it initially, and then what we're going to do is this the part where it's going to be a kind of a substitute for a strategy. And what we're going to do is we're going to prank as Alice. VM stop prank. Stop prank. I'll do that. Okay. And what we're going to do is, because we've given Alice up here, we've given Alice in our setup function, we've given both Bob and Alice these tokens. Okay, so unlike with Bob, where he's kind of depositing into the contract and he has to approve it for us, and then the contract is kind of doing a transfer from, Alice is just going to deposit those tokens directly into the contract. So we're just going to do USDC transfer, and we're going to say address, vault, and we're going to transfer in 100,000, okay? Just to make the maths easy. I've spelled that wrong. Transfer, there we go. Okay. And then what we're going to do is uint 256, and we're going to do shares to assets. What do we call it up above? We call it shares to assets redemptions. Okay, we'll do this. Copy. Go. False. Preview. Redeem. 10. So again, once again, 10,000. We're gonna see how many shares. If we pass in 10,000 shares, what will we get back? Whereas we got 10,000 up here, and when we pass in 10,000 up here, we got 10,000 back. But remember, Alice is adding an extra amount into it. Okay. So what we're gonna do then is we're gonna do assert equal. We're gonna do shares to assets redemption, and we're going to say 10,000. And of course, this is going to fail. In fact, I'll just copy that. Let me do it with a dummy strategy. Forge test match test. Okay, there we go. So it's failing. And we'll just do the stack. Have a look, and there you go. 1 second. What's up? So as you can see, it's saying the value that we're passing in is 10,000, but the actual value coming back is 20,000. And of course, that makes sense, because if you do the maths behind it, okay, Bob has put in 100,000 USDC, with 100,000 shares back. But here, Alice has directly transferred in 100,000 USDC with no shares. No shares sent back. Okay, so what you have then is we now have 200,000 tokens in the contract, but we have 100,000 shares. So as you can see, when we do that, and you pass in 10,000 shares, you should actually get 20,000 back. Okay, because this is simulating the strategy. So it's just, so what we're doing there is this essentially is like, could be anything. We could say in this case, simulate taking these 100,000 tokens and passing them into a lending protocol, and then get the APY of that, sell whatever emissions you get from that back into it, and just keep going, and then we would take it back out. And that's how the strategy would work in this place. But for the purposes of ours, we just want to do a dummy one, and really we just want to get an extra amount of tokens into the contract to see how it works. Okay, and if we run that again one more time, see that it should pass, because 10,000 shares gets you 20,000. So there we go. So that's just to show you how the accounting with the tokenized vault works under the hood, and how it's not always like for like. Of course, as the pool grows, your shares are going to get you back more of the pot of assets that's there, because that's the purpose of the vault. What we're going to do in our next video is I'm probably going to deploy some simple staking contract or something like that. What we'll do is we might use the hooks to hook into it, and that way when somebody deposits tokens into the vault, we can use the hooks under the hood to then deposit them into our strategy. So we'll probably just deposit directly into a staking contract or something like that. That will give additional USDC back, and it will just show how it all fits together.